Welcome, everybody, to MacSparky Labs, Talking Retirement with Jim Eagar. This is an interesting topic for me. It came up because in some of the other labs meetups, in the before and after recording bits where we're all just kind of chatting, I've heard from several of you that are at the edge of retirement or recently retired, and you said you were still trying to figure it out. And I happen to know somebody that has thought a lot about that topic. It's our buddy Jim Eagar, who's a fellow Labs member. Jim guested on the Focus podcast earlier this year and talked a little bit about figuring out retirement at the time. And I thought it'd be fun to have Jim just kind of address it directly in the labs. He's got just kind of limited comments today about, the journey and what he's learned. And for those of you that are retiring or contemplating or just have any questions, I thought it'd be a good chance for us to just talk about it and see where we're at. And I also thought this session would be good in the sense that we can get everybody together who's thinking about this. And maybe for those of you that want to talk more amongst each other, we don't have to turn each one of these into a Labs meetup. I know there are several friendships and groupings and masterminds that have grown out of the labs with various members, and this would be a good jumping off point for that as well. So that's the goal for today. Jim is going to share some thoughts with us. We're going to talk a little bit about retirement and see where this all leads. So without further ado, Jim, the mic is yours.
Okay, thanks, David. First of all, having been an attorney, I have to give a disclaimer. I am no expert of retirement. I've just had my experience where I hit it and kind of went through the phases of retirement, and I'm still working on it. So I'm still trying to figure it out. So all I can do is share with you some helpful stuff, things that I found helpful, and some concepts that I think might benefit you also. So I've got a keynote presentation to share with you. So just talking about retirement, the two of us. And sometimes, some people know who I am, some people don't. And I always like knowing a little bit about the people that I'm listening to. So I was an original 1984 Mac buyer in Minot, North Dakota. I was stationed there in the Air Force and walked into a computer store and saw this computer. And it was like, wow, this is great. I sat down in front of it in just a few minutes without any instruction. I could actually do things with it. So I purchased one. That was a 128K machine and upgraded it all the way to a Mac Plus, and then had Macs most of the time since then. There was a period during my law firm days when the program I depended upon actually dropped the Mac, started on the Mac, dropped the Mac, and went to PC. So then I switched over to Windows for a while until I found out I could run Mac programs or PC programs on the Mac when they got Intel. I had a long career in the United States Air Force, had 3 careers while I was in there. I was enlisted as medical admin, then I was a chaplain, and then last I was a JAG. I was a JAG mostly not on active duty, although I did a bunch of active duty tours, but I was also an attorney in my civilian practice. So I was retired from the Air Force in 2009. And then in 2015, I retired from my civilian practice and moved to Arizona. I thought I kind of knew what I'd be interested in and did a mind map on it. And it still wound up being very different than what I thought at that point. So there I started writing one blog, wrote that for about a year, decided I was done with that, started writing the blog that I've been doing now for the last couple of years. I served in a volunteer position with a sheriff's posse as a patrolling officer. And now I am a part-time National Park Service ranger, which I had no clue that that would be something I would ever do. So that kind of gives you an idea of how flexible and how open you need to be in retirement. So this is a picture of my second grade class in 1960 and 61, part of the baby boom, big classes, mobs of kids. Now 10,000 of us are retiring every day. So retirement and talking about retirement is important because a lot of people, a lot of us are doing it. And the other statistic that I thought was interesting is that about 1/3 of your life you can plan on being retired. So it's not like the old days where people worked for most of their years and then they retired for 5 and 10 years and then they were gone. It's just not that way now. So, are we ready for retirement? If you do a Google search on retirement planning, just about everything that comes up is going to be financial planning. We talk about financial planning, but we don't talk about psychological planning. We don't talk about the fact that you're going to go through some real upheavals, most likely, in retirement. And we don't even know about that. So we're retiring. The very words retire or retirement perpetuates the myth that old age is an unproductive time in life. That's kind of the assumption. People think that when you retire, you're done being productive and that's it. So our culture has really set us up for a fall by not helping to prepare us for the mental part of retirement. And even with the way we think about retirement, it's a time when we just don't do anything anymore. One of the really, the question is, what can we expect in retirement? Well, it's a process. One of the best resources I ran across was a 13-minute video. It's a TED Talk by Dr. Riley Moynes, in which he talks about the 4 phases of retirement that he detected as he did his research. And this is the type of thing I wish I'd known before I retired, not after I'd been retired for about 6 or 7 years. But this helped me to make sense of it. And if I knew this before I retired, I would have had an idea or a clue of what to expect. I probably still would have gone through the stages anyway, but at least I would have known about it. So I want to share that with you. The first stage is vacation. You're finally going to not have to work anymore. Your schedule is your own. You can sleep as late as you want to. You can stay up as late as you want to. If you want to play golf every day, you can do that, or fish every day, or whatever. It's extended vacation. It's full-time play is what it is. And that's what most people, I think retirement is all about before they get there. The problem is after about a year or so, that gets really old. People realize if that's all there is for retirement, is that all there is? And it feels empty and kind of hollow. At that point, a lot of people just try and stay busy and keep their mind on other things, because the next phase is feeling loss and feeling lost. And that hit me. I didn't know it would. I have no clue. But I started feeling negative and depressed and feeling unproductive. Uh, there's a whole bunch of losses that go with retiring. You lose your routine, which at first you thought was great. You lose your identity because so many of us, our whole identity is what we do. Most of us are professionals and we got very wrapped up in our identity as being a professional doing whatever it was we did. And we lose our purpose in life as well. There's also the loss of relationships. We don't have those built-in social relationships at work anymore. And for many of us, we lose power as well. And this is when Dr. Moynes talks about this. This is when you get hit by the bus, is when you start feeling this sense of loss and feeling lost. And unfortunately, I saw a lot of retirees who stayed right in stage 2 or phase 2. They were depressed. Again, they were people who just tried to stay busy because they didn't want to have to think about the fact that they were depressed and that they didn't have any sense of purpose in life or any of that. Hopefully, what happens next, the period of trial and error. This is where you're trying on lots of different things for fit, to see what works for you. What is it that will give you that sense of purpose again and that sense of identity again? For some people, it's hobbies, and that's a good place to start. If you have some hobbies, you might want to develop them more. For me, one of the things that helped me a lot was I had taken personality profiles through my adult life, and they really helped me to figure out who I was and what my areas of strength and weakness were, particularly the DISC profile, it's called. And then I ran across the thing called the motivation code profile. And that helped me to go back and think about and identify what kind of work did I find fulfilling in the past? Because chances are that same kind of work would help me to feel fulfilled in the future as well. So I use that. And then finally, in my study of productivity that I did about 3 years into retirement, I ran across this guy named, well, I already knew his name, David Sparks, and he talked about going on a retreat, and he gave some hints about his life role system. We now know it as the Productivity Field Guide. Back then, you kind of had to just pick up on it, and then he would drop little tidbits along the trail as to how he was doing different aspects of this system. And for me, that was a trial and error that worked really well. I grabbed a hold of that, and it gave me a sense of purpose in my life, that my job was to fulfill these roles and become the best person that I could. So for some people, maybe that would be helpful. So you go through all the trial and error stuff, and if you keep up with that and you find some things that start to work and everything, and you're open to that, finally you'll get to the last one, which is reinvention and repurpose. So that's openness to reinvention. You know, to get there, you have to be open to being, in many ways, a different person than you were during your working life. You have to be open to new opportunities and new interests. And go from there. Uh, One of the things that Dr. Moynes mentioned is that most retirees seem to find that their best reinvention and sense of repurpose is in the areas that they serve other people. And I've found that myself as well. So in the sheriff's posse, that was a pure service kind of thing to try and help the community. With blog writing, I still see that as a way of serving other people to help them. And the same thing with the National Park Ranger. Um, I feel like I'm serving people, I'm teaching people about history. Um, I get to interact with people. So I see that as a service thing. So what you're looking for in the last stage is to develop a new sense of purpose and fulfillment, which is where we want to wind up again. I think attitudes are really the key thing here. And this is something I've really just been thinking about the last 6 months or so. I think number one, as we've already mentioned, you have to be open to new things, discovery, experimentation. And you may surprise yourself. I've surprised myself a bunch of times by getting into things and being interested in stuff that I never had any interest in before. I never imagined that I'd be a national park ranger part-time, but it's something I never thought I'd ever do. I think you have to have an attitude as you go into retirement of being open to discover those new things and those new opportunities. The other thing that I think is important is as you're retiring, you're also, by definition, getting older as well. And a lot of older people develop really negative attitudes. You ask them how they're doing, and they give you a list of their medical ailments and that sort of thing. Um, I've got a quote that I got from a book that I see every morning, which is a part of my day one journaling. It's just a statement that says this, and then I usually respond to it. I intend to live a vigorous, purposeful, healthy life well into old age. I believe that our minds and our bodies and all of us are one being, and that we can affect how our aging is going to be by our attitude. If we're negative about it and we're just talking about how everything's going downhill and we don't like it and all of this, I think that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. I think the same thing is true if you have a positive attitude as well. So the other thing that I do every morning is I've got this quote, "It's going to be a great day." And I've shied away from that in the past because I kind of took it a little too literally. I'm not. I'm not saying something like new agey here, which with I'm just wishful thinking that somehow the universe is. I'm going to put this out in the universe, and somehow it's going to manipulate circumstances to where everything that happens to me is good. That's not what I'm saying at all. It's an intention. It may not turn out to be the greatest day of my life, but it's an intention I'm going to start out with. And I've noticed if I start out thinking this is going to be a horrible day, what kind of day do you think it is? Turns out to be a horrible day. On the other hand, if I start out saying it's going to be a great day, it usually is. So I think that's an important attitude to have as well. And then gratefulness. The way I get to a lot of gratefulness is stoic negative visualization, which is you kiss your wife goodbye, and then you think, someday either I'm going to die or she's going to die, and we're not going to be together anymore. And while that sounds kind of negative and morbid, what it really does is it makes me not take her for granted and enjoy more the time that I have with her. So that's kind of what I mean by gratefulness, is being grateful for everything that I have, as opposed to focusing on the things that I don't have or the things that are going downhill or whatever. To me, all of those attitudes, being open, having a positive attitude toward aging, having a positive attitude just for the day, and gratefulness have all really helped me personally in retirement and in continuing to develop and get as much out of retirement as I can. So stay productive and fulfilled, I think, is the goal that we're all shooting for. And Joshua Becker says in his book, The Things That Matter, the difference between unhappy and happy retirees is having a purpose. And I really believe that. I think that's the case. That's the way it is. I think about the audience today, lab members. I'm not sure if we're in a better position to deal with retirement or a worse one in some ways. Better in the sense that, again, most of us are educated, we're professionals. Maybe we have a better skills to help us recognize, when we're having difficulties and figure our way out of that. On the other hand, professionals tend to very much get wrapped up with what their job was. And then that's a negative because you may not be doing exactly, you probably won't be doing exactly what you did during your professional life. So the other point I wanted to make here is what is productive and fulfilling is going to change. At one time in your life, this might be really productive and fulfilling for you, but maybe because your interests change or because you get bored or whatever, then it's going to be something else. And that doesn't stop in retirement. I can tell you that. It keeps on going, and I keep changing and working in different areas as well. So as far as resources go, I wasn't sure how I could get resources to you in a way that made sense. So what I did is I posted a blog this morning on my website, originalmacguy.com, and it's just all resources for retirement. So there's all clickable resources, and you're welcome to visit that if you want to look at some of the videos and find Dr. Moyne's video. I'd really encourage you to watch that at a minimum, but feel free to visit there. And I'll let Dave take over.
Brilliant. Jim and I are friends and we talk frequently. And one of the things I love is the addition you have put on this idea of your mental attitude towards it as you come into retirement, I think makes so much different. And that's insight you've got from going through it. I was reflecting. You know, when I was a lawyer, I had a lot of business clients, and many of them were very successful and millionaires. And so often in my career, they would retire, and then I'd hear like a year or two later that they died, and they weren't necessarily old, And I really, that question always made me wonder, well, what is it? Because these guys were captains of their industry, and suddenly they just shriveled up when they retired, and I think they got stuck. I think in a lot of cases they just didn't find their way on. I think your resource is excellent. One I would add, I put it in the chat, is this book Ikigai. And they went to
Oh,
Japan.
yeah.
There was this island where there's a bunch of 100-year-olds, and they just started interviewing them to find out, well, why did you live so long? And the answer was so often this concept, Japanese concept of ikigai. My interpretation of it is they jump out of bed every morning. Each one of them had a purpose. Like maybe it was their bonsai tree or their kids or their dog or whatever, but there was something that they were very engaged with life, which kept them in the game. It's interesting to me the overlap between the insight from these old Japanese people and what Jim has experienced. I think there's a lot to it. And I'm the youngster here. I'm only in my 50s. I'm loving what I'm doing. I can't imagine stopping being MacSparky. So that's not even on my radar. But I know there's enough of you that are interested in this. I wanted to do this session. So I thought what we do now is just open it up for questions and discussion, and see what you guys think.